Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out this blue-red discard deck with Captain Howler, Sea Scourge as its commander, a 4-mana 5/4 legendary shark pirate with built-in protection. Ward makes the opponent pay 2 mana and 2 life if they want to target it, so that's always nice. And then whenever we discard one or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. So if we discard several cards at once, we might get more than just 2 power. And whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, we get to draw a card. So we still only get to draw 1 card, even if we maybe discarded 2 cards at once. But if we enable the captain's ability several times, we might still get to draw a card more than once in that one attack step. So things can get a little bit confusing to keep track of, but hopefully we'll make it work. And then taking a look at the deck breakdown, of course our game plan is very simple. The plan is to first ramp out our commander if possible, and then get it in play and start discarding and drawing to enable captain's ability. Ideally have some other creatures we can target as well, some of which might have the unblockable effect, so we can sneak past opposing blockers to guarantee that damage and those extra cards. So if we break down the deck, first we've got our ramp section, lots of mana artifacts to try and play our captain around turn 3 already. Then we've got our discard effects, which go from 1 mana all the way up to 5, even some cyclers we can discard for 1 mana to keep enabling the captain's ability. And then we've got some additional discard payoffs. These might include cards that trigger off discarding cards. We've got some madness cards in here as well, cards we actively want to discard, because then we can cast them on the cheap without actually having to get rid of them. And then the miscellaneous section includes some unblockable creatures, as we mentioned, which are good to target with a captain's ability in case we cannot get past with our ground creatures. So that's our rough breakdown. Now for the deep dive, starting with our ramp artifacts. We now also get to play with Chrome Mox, so that's a huge addition for the format, especially for non-green decks that might not get access to all that much mana acceleration otherwise. And then we've got the classic 2-mana artifacts here, with Arcane Signet being the best one. Cold Steel Heart enters tapped, Guardian Idol enters tapped but can turn into a creature. We've got Mind Stone, which can draw. Ornithopter Paradise is a creature, so it's more susceptible to removal, but can also maybe be pumped by Captain Howler as an extra threat. And then we've got the Solar Transformer, similar to Cold Steel Heart, and the Iron Crag could also turn into an equipment, although usually we'll keep it as a mana artifact. And all these are great for playing Captain a turn ahead of schedule. Worn Power Stone is not going to speed up that process, but does untap, making 2 mana, so that can also still be powerful to double spell on future turns. Then our discard effects start out at 1 mana with Faithless Looting, one of the more powerful ones, as we get to draw 2 and discard 2 for 1 mana, and can even flash it back out of the graveyard. Lightning Axe is great as well, as a removal spell dealing 5 to a creature, have to discard a card as an additional cost. And then there's lots of 2-mana instants and sorceries that will discard a card and draw 2, or draw 2 and discard a card in the case of Chart, of course. Could also play its second main after attacking to just draw 2 cards. The Ghostly Pilfer is especially synergistic with Captain Howler as a 2/1 creature that has the ability to discard a card to become unblockable until end of turn, and we can activate that ability more than once, so we can discard our entire hand to it, and each separate instance of discarding a card triggers the captain's first ability and the second ability, so we might be able to draw multiple cards after hitting the opponent while also getting in a ton of extra damage. And then the Pilfer is pretty good in Commander and Brawl anyways, because now if our opponent casts their commander from exile, then they're not casting it from their hands, and we get to draw a card as well. Then we've got the Otterball Elite as a creature that can attack with Vigilance and then still tap to draw and discard a card, triggering the captain. We've got Artist's Talent, which can trigger whenever we cast a non-creature spell to discard and draw. We've got Cathartic Reunion, which can discard 2 cards at once to draw 3. Then Demand Answers, an instant speed variant, which discards and draws 2, can also sack an artifact to it. Fear of Missing Out, also pretty nice if we can enable Delirium specifically. There's the Highway Robbery, which we can plot so we can cast it later for free once we get our commander in play. ENT is also very good, as it can repeatedly help us discard and draw, while maybe still exiling additional cards off the top of our library. Can also give our creatures +1 counters and trample to make sure we actually connect with a captain's ability to draw more cards. Party Thrasher, another way we can discard a card each turn. And then we've got Witch's Mark, discard, draw 2, and get a Wicked Roll token. And then Is a Charm can draw 2 and discard 2 at instant speed, a discard disadvantage, but we also have the flexibility of dealing 2 to a creature or countering a non-creature spell unless the opponent pays 2. And then Key to the City, another one of these staples in the deck, as we can use it to discard a card and make a creature unblockable until end of turn, so that will trigger the captain while ensuring that our creature can actually connect. And then a Smuggler Sculptor, a vehicle that's easily crewed as a 3/3 flyer that gets to draw a card and discard after we attack. It's also very synergistic with our commander. Then moving up the curve at 3 mana, we've got Kiora, which is also a great addition. Gets to draw 2 and discard 2 when it enters, and with Threshold, which we enable pretty easily in this deck, gets to make an 8/8 token when it attacks. Then we've got Brass's Tunnel Grinder, which can also help us discard our entire hand, so that can represent a lot of triggers with Captain Howler. We've got Fable of the Mirror Breaker, doesn't really need an introduction, but also very synergistic thanks to Chapter 2. Collective Defiance, another way to discard our entire hand to get a lot of extra power on our creatures. Seasoned Pyromancer, when it enters, can discard 2 and draw 2, and if we discard non-land cards, can also make some 1/1 tokens. And both Seasoned Pyromancer and Fear of Missing Out are cards that are excellent if you're already empty-handed, since then they'll just draw a card or draw 2 in the case of Seasoned Pyromancer. Got the Broadside Barrage, dealing 5 to creature Planeswalker, as well as drawing and discarding. And then Prismari Command, another 3 mana instant, and one of the modes is draw 2 and discard 2. So with all of these instant speed discard effects, we can also make it harder for the opponent to line up their blocks, since we might be able to pump up one of our attackers at instant speed with the Captain's ability. Then the Royal Scions has multiple modes, including draw and discard, as well as giving a creature 2 extra power, first strike and trample, so both of those can be incredibly useful. The Great Door, a way to draw and discard each turn. Ill-Timed Explosion is the only sweeper in our deck and can also draw and discard in the process. We've got Lorien Revealed, which we can island cycle to grab an island, even a non-basic island, and occasionally we'll cast it for 5 mana to draw 3. Ox is also excellent, since we can cast it for 5 to discard our hand and draw 3, but we can also discard it and later escape it for just double red, at which point it enters with an additional +1 counter, and we still get to discard our hand and draw 3, maybe while already being empty-handed, or if we have cards left in hand to trigger Captain a bunch. And then Cavalier of Flame is very similar, can discard any number of cards when it enters and then draw that many. If it dies, we get to deal a bunch of damage to the opponent equal to the number of lands in our graveyard, and can also pump up our team, giving them haste. And then the Windcaller Aven is also quite nice, being able to cycle it while also giving a creature flying until end of turn, so that can ensure that our captain also hits the opponent. And then going over some of our discard payoffs, we've got some Madness cards, such as the Blazing Rootwalla, which has Madness for just 0 mana. So if we discard it, it goes to exile, and then we can cast it for free, so that's always nice. The Flame Blade, one of the payoffs for discarding by getting additional power until end of turn. And recently, Marauding Mako is kind of the more powerful version of it, as it picks up +1 counters instead. And then at 2 mana, the Scrounging Skyray is very similar, just has built-in flying. Then there's Just the Wind as another Madness instant that can be cast for single blue to bounce a creature back. And then in red, Fiery Temper, basically a lightning bolt with Madness, but of course having the upside of discarding it and it not going to waste means we're basically up on cards in that exchange. And then we've got our Containment Construct, making it so if we discard a card, it also doesn't go to waste since it gets exiled and we can still play it for the rest of our turn. And then we've got a few Phoenix creatures, Detective's Phoenix, we can bestow out of the graveyard pretty easily by collecting 6 evidence, and then can give a creature 2 extra power, flying and haste. And then we've got our Flamewake Phoenix as a 2/2 flyer that we can get back for just a single red mana if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, which our commander will automatically satisfy. Buccaneer deals 1 damage to each opponent whenever we discard a card. Riel can draw us extra cards whenever we discard the first time each turn. Monument can choose between drawing, making a treasure, or making the opponent lose 3 life when we discard a card. And then Wander is excellent to have in the graveyard, as it will give the team flying if we control an island. And Hollow One we can often cast for 1 or for 0 mana if we've discarded enough cards in our turn. And then the miscellaneous section has a little bit of removal with Lightning Bolt at 1 mana, and Fury, which we can potentially evoke for free by exiling a red card from our hand. And then Ragavan, of course, also quite nice if you can play it early, and then can also hit the opponent, making additional treasures. And then we've got our unblockable creatures, Mistcloaked Herald, Slitherblade as our 1-mana options, and then the Shoreline Looter is also a looter since it gets to draw and discard if it hits the opponent, so it has a bit more synergy, although of course if you're already hitting the opponent, getting to draw and discard is not really going to benefit from having our commander in play, since the damage has already been done. And then the mana base is pretty straightforward. Cephalid Colosseum, one of the cards you may not see in other decks. With Threshold, we can draw 3 and discard 3, so another way to trigger our commander. The channel lands are especially synergistic because they also count as discarding a card, in the case of Otawara bouncing something, and Crucible making hasty 1/1 tokens. Arena of Glory can also give our creatures haste. And then we've got our Gyreach Sanitarium, forcing each player to draw and discard, can also trigger Captain Howler, and then Rogue's Passage, another way to make our creatures unblockable, even though it can get quite pricey. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Juri, a black-red sacrifice deck. This hand could work out. We've got Looter on 2, some discard outlets on 3. Wanderer's good to have in the graveyard. We've got an island already, so I'll try it. What we don't have is mana acceleration to play Howler on turn 3. But we'll get there eventually. Opponent plays Juri. And we'll play our Looter. I think I prefer playing the Great Door for now. Hold Tunnel Grinder until after we play Captain. But we can attack first and see what we draw into. Opponent's got the Apprentice. Good in a sacrifice deck. And a Blood Fountain. Okay. Take 2. Alright, now we could play our Shark instead. So that can start growing. And then Island Cycling can also enable it. Discard Wanderer. And I guess we'll play Key to the City. So we're off to a decent start. Although our opponent could mow down our creatures at any point. It's going to be a Hobbling Zombie. That's acceptable. A bit better in Historic Brawl than it used to be in Standard, thanks to the upgrade costing 2 as opposed to 3. They might have removal that makes them sack a creature, just going for the blood token, discarding Blade Reforged. So Juri grows, Apprentice triggers. Could potentially still trade for Juri by growing the Shark here, but I don't think we're interested. Alright, so we'll just play our commander. Can activate Key. Just so we can discard and trigger Captain. And what to get rid of. Maybe Is It Charmed, not gonna line up all that well. Alright, so let's get in for 6. And draw Ornithopter and a land. And discard maybe Ornithopter at this point. And this trigger's gonna go to waste. But still grows our Mako. So we're making progress. Bojuka Bog exiles my graveyard, so no more flying from Wanderer. Quite relevant here, since they have some pretty good blockers with the Death Toucher. But then we'll still be able to use Key to the City. And Braids, maybe sacking some artifacts here. And yeah, if I block Juri, what happens? They don't have any instant speed sack effects as far as we can tell. And they can't pay the ward to deal 3 to my commander. So I think that's okay. Unless I'm missing something. They can take out the looter, but not my captain. So their opponent's now maybe coming to that realization. A looter down. And then Braids is gonna get to draw here. So we are still taking some damage. I'll decline. And then this might be a tunnel grinder situation. Just discard everything and hope for the best. I think I leave a red mana up as opposed to blue. Alright. And then we get a ton of triggers here. Opponent can block one of my 2 creatures. So I may as well go all out on the Mako. And since we can make it unblockable, that should just be lethal here. And then it doesn't matter too much what we discard. Hit you for 19. And yeah, that's where Tunnel Grinder can be incredibly powerful with Captain Howler on the battlefield. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Dina, often built as an infinite life gain combo deck. This hand has a couple discard effects. Phoenix is good to discard. No real mana acceleration or interaction, so I think I'm gonna have to send it back. This one isn't a huge improvement, but I guess we could discard Flame Wake. Hope to draw some interaction, and then Ox is also good to have in the graveyard to eventually escape. And then Key helps us attack past any blockers. So we'll still need some help off the top. Can start by surveilling. Probably gonna have to keep a land on top as our opponent's cries. And keep mountain. Alright, so I could play Key, hang on to the demand answers until later. And then at the very least, next turn I could play Monument and use Key to discard and then draw with Monument to basically cycle through our hand. Soothsayer can help find them a Sanguine Bond, so whenever they gain life, I lose that much life. So it doesn't go infinite with Dina, at least. Play Spire Bluff. Play Monument. And we can pass. Could have also played Flame Wake second main just to block the Soothsayer. And also potentially have something that I can then target with Captain on the following turn. But we'll see how this plays out. So, don't have to target anything. Discard Flame Wake. Could also go for a treasure token, actually. Yeah, maybe that makes more sense. Because that way I get to play Captain, bring back Flame Wake, and target it. So won't quite be able to Faithless Looting. Pay the 1. Discard Ox. And here, do we treasure or do we draw? I think I keep treasuring. Hit you for 4, draw card. Alright, and then Wander's excellent to discard next turn as well. So we're making progress. Seeing a lot of neat synergies. But this could be a scary turn where we might see another combo piece. Patient 0 saying damage isn't removed from creatures your opponents control during cleanup. So we're basically playing Hearthstone. That is fine. Still gonna decline, we have better uses of our mana. Step 1, probably looting. Get Wander in the graveyard since I have an island. And then Tunnel Grinder looks good too. And then both of my creatures fly, so doesn't matter too much what I target. Here I can maybe still draw just to enable the Tunnel Grinder, and then Treasure. Okay, and then Tunnel Grinder, just discarding the rest of my hand. Alright, get some more triggers. So now I'm attacking for 17 at the very least, but we could make it even more. If I play a land, activate key. Then now I could escape Ox, exiling 8 other cards. So I will lose Wander, but this flies anyway and this is unblockable. And then I'll get to discard my hand, draw 3, which gives me a bunch more triggers. Alright. And our opponent explodes. Was this lethal? I guess 19 plus 4 is 23 exactly. So yeah, that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing a 5-color room enchantment deck. Our hand seems fine. Keep a Bolt, turn 2 Mindstone, turn 3 Captain, and then plenty of discard effects afterwards. So we'll see if they have a Mana Elf. They do. Bolt a bird, you love to see it. And opponents got their own signet. Okay. Captain resolves. With a ward, pretty likely to survive, as our opponent keeps ramping with many journeys. Alright, so this is our opportunity to get some damage. Probably go for Kiora. Discard Ox and Thundering Falls. Yeah, that still looks good. And then I can Witch's Mark, maybe ditching Cavalier. And then next turn we're ready to maybe Tunnel Grinder. Maybe should have gotten Steam Vents actually, if I wanted to cast Cavalier instead of Tunnel Grinder. But this way we can maybe Tunnel Grinder and then still escape an Ox as well. So we certainly have options. But yeah, opponent takes 12. We draw 2. And sadly now a pull of the Mist Moon gets rid of our commander. So back to the command zone. Should still be able to trigger Kiora next turn to make an 8/8. So we have options. Could also replay my commander, but then we're not making a Kraken. So maybe go for Robbery. And then I can still play a Fable at the very least. Flamewake also good to discard. pass a turn. And then next turn I could even play Captain and still cycle Avon to trigger it. But just flying the Scion should be lethal here. Can even discard Rootwalla and Phoenix, both potentially returning. And then a Captain. Cycle. Fly the Octopus. And pump it up. And can even play a free hollow one, but opponent seems dead here. Unless they have a 1-mana answer. Which they don't. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing a blue-white artifact deck with a new Guidelight. Our hand is functional. Slither on 1, turn 2 Ironcrag, sets up turn 3 Captain. And then Robbery discarding Rootwalla gives us a free Madness creature. Opponent does get to increase their speed right away. So that could be scary. For now, we can fetch Steam Vents. And I guess we'll play the Idol, which enters tapped. May as well hit for 1 since we're not blocking. And ooh, Synthesizer, very powerful for an artifact deck. Now we do have Key to the City to make our threats unblockable and already control a Slither Blade. So we just gotta hope to chain together enough discard effects to get past the opponent's defenses while hopefully not dying in the meantime. But our opponent's already gonna get to max speed here. So then they can pay a mana to copy their artifacts. So that could mean a pair of tokens from a Synthesizer if they have a 3-mana artifact specifically. And Disruptor gets them to max speed. And do Perilous Snare. At least they can't exile my commander with it. But they can get rid of my Idol and Slither Blade. While triggering Synthesizer twice, so still pretty brutal. And the snares can also give them an extra +1 counter. So yeah, we're desperately behind. Facing lethal next turn. Still have Key to trigger Captain, but I don't think that's saving me here. Probably still gonna try and hit the opponent here with Captain, using Key. Can put in Rootwalla. And then see what I draw, hopefully another blocker. Or I just go for Robbery and hope for the best. Sure. So yeah, having that 1-mana evasive creature to enable their speed was pretty important. But we should just die next turn. Did they even activate Perilous Snare? I think they forgot. I guess only as a sorcery, but yeah, they could have still activated in their turn. Thought Monitor also copied, triggers Synthesizer twice. Can jump one of the huge constructs and still take over 20 damage. So yeah, the blue-white Guidelight deck at its best. Next turn with Kiora, we could trigger Captain 2 more times, Keys another discard. So we were maybe close to dealing 14 unblockable damage. But that's one turn we're not getting. GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Loot the Pathfinder, so a battle of the new commanders. And this hand seems functional. Okay, maybe hang on to the Ox to set up our explosion, which could be a powerful board wipe. So then I don't want to necessarily overextend into it, but we'll see how the game develops. So picking up Transformers, excellent. So could already play the Captain next turn. And our opponent explores. The landscape can fetch a basic. And Captain looks good. So now we're maybe looking to set up Explosion, discarding a 3-drop, so Captain doesn't get destroyed. Opponent keeps up 3 mana, so they might have a counterspell here. So could just attack, and then second main, play Fable and Elite. Although now we're kind of running into our own Explosion. Could just cast the Explosion as a 1-for-1. Yeah, I'll start by attacking and see what's up. Still technically possible that they block and then Lightning Bolt to finish off my commander, but nope. And then try the Elite. And try Fable. And that's our opponent's going to counter. Alright, fair enough. So next turn I can still try the Explosion, which at least triggers prowess, so Elite might still survive if we just plan to deal 3. Loot hits us for 4. And yeah, I guess Barrage now a better answer to loot. Opponent can still exhaust to draw 3, but that's fine by me. Trigger prowess. Can also attack with the Elite and then still tap it to trigger Captain. And our opponent's gonna draw. Okay. Discard Wonder. And then go to attackers. And then now draw and discard. Finding a Ragavan. Could have potentially dashed it had I done that sooner, but now it makes sense. Might still want to hang on to the Ox as something I can also cast. Yeah, Ragavan doesn't seem all that impressive here, to be fair. So we get to draw a few more cards. Alright, and then both Slitherblade and Great Door have their merit. Probably to go for Slitherblade. Could even hang on to the lands, so I can set up Ox, discard a bunch of cards, and trigger Captain for the win. Since I would have 4 cards to discard, which is 9 power exactly. Although the Otter Ball Elite could also give it 2 more power. So we'll see what happens. Opponent steals one of our cards. We don't have a ton of spot removal, so not too likely that they found one of those. It's going to be a Kiora instead. So they still have 3 mana with Elves. Explosion dealing 3 damage, discarding Door actually looks okay too. Since Elite will survive thanks to prowess. So we could try that. Alright, and then I guess ditching a 2-drop is also good enough. Although I'm happy enough dealing 3. So I can also play Thrasher. Opponent seems to have a response. They're gonna Planar Incision the Lootmonger. So I guess happy I dealt 3 as opposed to 2. They get to heist my library. No 1-mana counterspells in my deck as far as I know. Opponent says good game, and yeah, that's game over as we get to pump our creatures for 4 and then get a nice attack in. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand, facing Urza, blue-eyed artifact control. Not going to be having too many things to bolt early, so I can maybe fetch my Survey land instead. And then turn 2, maybe start with Ornithopter. Chromox seems fine. So now if Ironcrag resolves, I could also play Ornithopter. I'll pitch maybe a Lightning Bolt. And then next turn I can play my Captain already. There's Urza. And Inti, so I can actually play both. Is that the move? Could also go for Riel with Inti, but the sooner we get Captain going, the better. Especially while the coast is clear. And then I guess we don't have to trigger Inti this turn, but it's ready to go to trigger next turn. Opponent's gonna Brain Surge. Thanks to the cost reduction from Urza, only costs 2. They're maybe looking for their Might Stone and Weak Stone to be able to assemble Urza Planeswalker. Brain Surge gets much better if they have a shuffle effect, like a fetch land, to play afterwards. So we might see that here. Just a basic. So they shouldn't have the mana to answer Captain, but a Fabricate can search up Mightstone, and then the Mightstone pays for the ward from Captain. But no, opponent decides to go with a Simulacrum Synthesizer instead. Cavalier the draw. So we've got a wealth of options. Riel into Witch's Mark seems fun, although Cavalier, discard the rest of my hand, isn't bad either. And then if I draw into a land, I could even give it haste. And with Inti, we're pretty likely to get something useful. And drew a land, so I can always play that. So I think we actually target the Cavalier with Captain Howler's trigger, since we can give it Trample with Inti. And then play land from exile. Activate Cavalier. And then I'll smash, maybe just with these two. Although could technically attack all out and still pump Inti with one of our effects. And our opponent scoops it up, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Kellan, blue-green, kinda ramp, good at blowing up artifacts. Although, at least we have answers here with a Lightning Axe. So this hand feels good enough. Turn 2 Transformer sets up maybe a turn 3 Captain. And we drew the lands, so probably still one double red. And then Lightning Axe is also a discard outlet for Fiery Temper if we need it. And a Lenor Elves. Alright, still gonna go for Captain. And then the ward, hopefully good enough to protect it here. And then we have answers to Kellan. Okay, so a couple ways we can go about it. But I don't mind just Lightning Axe, discard Fiery Temper to madness it. Deal with the Lanor Elves. Gotta be careful what I'm targeting here. Pay the 1. Kellan down. And then we still have a land drop to play Royal Scions versus Kiora. Might be at a point where we can already get close to enabling Kiora for next turn. And then Ox is good to have in the graveyard. Get a bunch more triggers. Not bad. Colosseum is also close to active. So that can also draw 3, discard 3. And our opponent just with a Provisioner, and they explode. Awesome. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, facing Kenrith. 5-color, good stuff. Always going to be a tricky matchup. This hand is okay, I would say. Don't quite get to play Captain on turn 3, but Worn Powerstone helps us empty out our hand afterwards. So I'll try it. Gonna hang on to the looting until after we play Captain if possible. And then I can start by surveilling, setting up a turn 2 elite. Opponent's got black mana up. Do need a 3rd land, so we'll be keeping those on top. And sure, I'll fetch now. And then turn 3 Power Stones, likely the plan. Opponent actually has a Fatal Push, yeah. So elite down. We're up to 3 cards in graveyard for Kiora. Could play Kiora on 3 and then set up a Scion of the Deep on the following turn already. I think I still prefer getting my commander going. Opponent's got a Dark Ritual, so they're ramping something out. A Binding, ouch. That destroys our Power Stone. Can still play my Captain, but now if they have a different answer, it's going to be a while before I can replay it. Still gotta try. They still have to pay the ward, so they would need a 1 or 2 mana answer, basically. We get to untap. Now they could have a counterspell up. So maybe start things out with a looting, which our opponent's going to veto. Fair enough, could still flash it back, but at this point, probably go for Kiora. Maybe playing the land first in case I want to cycle the Aven. That works. So now Kiora's active as well. And maybe hang on to the Chart of Course. Don't have to cycle the Aven, could save it to fly over next turn. Flying Kiora could also be a way to not have it get blocked. While still making an 8/8. Alright, pass a turn. And Kenrith. So opponent has 1 mana up. And yeah, I'll cycle the Aven now, see what we pick up. Find an Ox, so I can actually cast it here, discarding 2 more cards. Seems worthwhile. Target Kiora. And if I trade for Kenrith, that's okay now, I think. Opponent takes 9, we draw. And back to the command zone. The reason to leave it in the graveyard is if our opponent wipes the board, I can escape Ox exiling the captain, but we've got plenty of cards already. So no board wipe yet, maybe they're looking. And our opponent explodes, so even beat 5-color good stuff. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with Annie Flash as our opponent. And yeah, Chromox is pretty exciting in our opener. This seems like a keeper, although not quite sure what to sequence. Might be Flameblade on 1, and then Reunion on 2 to trigger it a bunch. And then we can still Chromox out Captain, or maybe use Chromox to play a 1-mana Hollow One on the same turn. Either way, some pretty explosive plays. And then Menace should still be good enough to attack past the opponent's initial blockers. Sample Garden into a stone. So that's okay. And yeah, I think we stick to the plan. A Reunion discarding Temper and Blade, even though I don't get the Madness value. So I'll decline. And then I can still Chromox out the Hollow One. Pitching might be Fable, because I have to wait a turn on Fable to discard, whereas with Robbery we can discard right away. So not a bad turn 2. And then we have the extra mana for Captain next turn. Fury can be pretty powerful as well. So hit you for 5, play Captain. Hope they don't have a counter spell. Because there's a few in white, Mana Tithe and Reprieve. It's going to be an Archivist flashed in. So fetch lands are now less effective. But we can maybe clear a path with Fury next turn. And wow, opponent scoops it up. Yeah, I guess our start was just too powerful. Maybe our opponent even missed a land drop. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a turn 1 Ragavan, although not going to be as powerful on the draw compared to on the play. Also don't have removal to clear a path, but the rest of our hand is still good enough, so don't mind keeping. And then turn 2 we can still play Signet. Bristly Bill. Well, if we can force them to trade a 2-drop for our 1-drop, that's still a small victory. And then I'll fetch. Mountain's probably fine. Hope to draw lanes to play our commander. If not, we can go looking with some of our discard effects. I see Scute Swarm, so opponent's definitely going pretty heavy on the landfall synergies. So we're gonna need to find a way to make our stuff unblockable or gain flying. Otherwise we're gonna struggle to get past Scute Swarm. So let me Reunion, discard Ox, and then don't know if Construct is all that relevant. At least Buccaneer can still maybe burn the opponent out if we can get through with our creatures on the ground. Found a land, so then I could still cast the Robbery to play a free Hollow One, or we can just play a 1-mana Hollow One and save this for after we play Captain. I think I like just cycling through the deck some more. And ditch Transformer. And a 0-mana Hollow One is always fun. So our opponent's missing black mana at the moment, but Innkeeper now makes a treasure to fix that. Still have a window to remove Skewed Swarm before they make a copy. And Altar can make them a lot of mana. Ooh, Fury. That's a pretty clean answer to what's in play. So, is that a move? Can play Captain, Fury, pitching Buccaneer maybe. And then still get in for 4. I guess I wouldn't be discarding anything for Captain this turn, but that's okay. Yeah, that seems decent. Also pretty close to casting Fury, to be fair. So I can maybe wait a turn, but then Altar could do some broken things. And they might be able to make a copy of Skewed Swarm, but I guess Fury can still clean those up. So a close call. Maybe I do just play Captain, attack, and pass a turn. Although it's not like I'm guaranteed to draw a 5th land next turn. So, tricky spot. So we'll clean those up, hit you for 4. And then next turn Inti can help enable Captain. Not too far from escaping the Ox. And the looting's excellent too. So how about we play Inti, and then play looting, which also triggers Inti. Discarding Power Stone and maybe Barrage. Inti somewhat likely to exile a land that we can play, and then I could still escape the Ox, so then in total we'll have discarded a bunch of cards to trigger Captain. Probably not attacking for lethal this turn, but we're getting close, plus Inti can once again give something a +1 counter and trample, so in 2 turns we should get there. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Lagomos, so black-red sacrifice. Our hand seems fine. Turn 1 Herald, turn 2 Idol sets up Captain on 3, and then we've got a few discard effects. Inquisition's gonna have a look. So they get to decide if I play the Elite or Idol on 2. Charter Course would also simply draw me 2 cards here. Alright, we'll go with Idol. And the rest now can take Charter Course, although Witch's Mark's still pretty good with our Captain. I think I still get a Steam Vents, just so we have double red. Their opponent's been shredding our hand apart. Hopefully next turn we get to shred their life total. And there's Lagomos, so that we could Lightning Axe. And an Artist's Talent, also an option. Okay, so if I were to Lightning Axe, maybe I start with Witch's Mark and give up on the Talent, since I'll be using my mana elsewhere. Counter on probably the Herald still. Discarding the Talents, we get to draw. And then I could go Signet into Lightning Axe, discard Iron Crag. Hit you for 11 and draw some cards. So now we're pretty far ahead on board. Wanderer is excellent to discard, and Collect the Defiance can also trigger Captain a few times. If they have removal for it, we're close to replaying it for 6. So don't hit my spot. Although Kolaghan's command's pretty effective. Destroy artifact and creature. But yeah, let's Collective Defiance. Can escalate it, dealing, I guess, 3 to my opponent. And wow, opponent concedes. But yeah, we can do the math here. If I Defiance, discarding 2 cards, that's +4 damage, and then 3 damage to my opponent, that's 11 exactly. So maybe your opponent saw that one coming. So yeah, Captain Howler, definitely impressed, especially if you can play it around turn 3 already with a bit of mana acceleration. Then there's a ton of ways to trigger it, and hopefully that can output enough damage to win the game in a turn or 2, because the damage output is quite impressive once it gets going. So yeah, definitely a bit different from your typical blue-red decks that are maybe more focused on non-creature spells. Here it's all about discarding, so it feels more like you're playing a combo deck that's a bit more creature-centric, as opposed to your typical control experience. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.